All right. Well, we won the game. We had to and should win now that we have this upcoming gauntlet. So, just looking ahead real quick, we got Philly next week, Baltimore the week after, the Chiefs the week after that, and then the Bengals, who are also going to be still fighting for a playoff spot, possibly. So that's a fun 4-game stretch. 10 wins, though. This matches last year, and we have 4 games left in the season. Now, would I be surprised if we finish the season with 10 wins? No. Did you hear the teams I just named off? Would I be surprised if we finished with, what do we have, 3 losses right now? Would I be surprised if we finished with 3 losses at the end of the season? It's not going to happen. We're going to lose at least one. Okay, at least 2 games in this upcoming stretch. The Chiefs have black magic, which mixed with the Steelers' black magic is going to be interesting on Christmas of all days of the year, too. The Eagles show their weaknesses today against Carolina, but I think that's more of the Eagles are planning for next week against Pittsburgh. And then the Ravens, they're still one of the best teams in the AFC. So even if the game is in Pittsburgh, it's a divisional game, and they're a really, really talented team. So, and Cincinnati, like I said, is going to be fighting. So it's going to be a really rough 4-week stretch. Kind of a boring game here. I feel like it was the most was going on in this game in the first quarter, which is funny because I think that's the least amount of points were scored in the first quarter. Or I guess you could say the Browns tied because they only scored in the first and the fourth. And there's not necessarily an overall takeaway from this, except for George Pickens just made a bag by not playing football because, it's contract year. Well, is it a contract year? Yeah, I think it's a contract year. Or he has 1 year left on his contract. He's still playing for a contract. And, most players, they want to ball out so they get their money. And George Pickens didn't have to go on the field to prove that he is worth a lot of money to the Steelers. Separating the player from the person. The player of George Pickens is a complete game changer for Pittsburgh. Also for Russell Wilson, as you can tell. But also I'm going to give Russell a little bit of leeway because when you're throwing, who is the leading receiver for Pittsburgh? Van Jefferson. Well, no, sorry. The leading receiver was Scotty Miller, who was activated this morning because George was deactivated. So yeah, when you're throwing to Ben Skoranek, Scotty Miller, I'll give you a little bit of leeway. Speaking of guys we're throwing to, why did we trade for Mike Williams? He had how many targets? 4 targets. Okay, 3 for 36. I'm happy that he got involved, and I also really liked what I was seeing from him. He really does remind, I guess I shouldn't say he reminds me of George because he's way older than George, but him and George's play styles are very similar. When I say where is he, it's just because if you're going to trade for a guy, I know we didn't give up that much. I think a 5th is still too much than we should have given up, but we acquire a guy. You're hoping to use him unless you're the Baltimore Ravens and Deontay Johnson. But, so I was hoping when George Pickens went out, I was hoping that Mike would get 8 targets, but I'll take 4. I guess I'll take half of that. But yeah, there wasn't much of a takeaway from this game. I'm going to go quarter by quarter here, how I normally do, and then overall just kind of thoughts. We were relatively up tempo for a majority of the game. Sometimes it didn't make sense to me. Was it the beginning of the 4th? We got the ball back after Cleveland punted. Yeah, pinned us in our own 5, and we went up tempo for some reason on 2nd down. Just run the clock. Didn't understand that, but I did early into the game, first quarter, second quarter, we were going up tempo. I really think that's great when Pittsburgh does that. It's been very sparingly used this season for some reason, but when we've used it, it's been really, really good. And that just comes with having a veteran quarterback in Russell Wilson that can organize and get the offense set in those up tempo moments. And so I'd like to see more of that going forward, especially against a Philly defense or a Chiefs defense. I was thinking if I wanted to say Baltimore or not, but Baltimore's pass defense has been kind of a funnel. It's the run defense that's been really stout for Baltimore. 3rd and out to start. We had in the first half 4 straight. It wasn't 4 straight. I think we had 4 3-and-outs in the first half. I think it's just trying to figure out who Russ is going to be throwing to for the most part in this game, which I did think the person that should have stepped up wasn't Mike Williams. Like I said, I would like to see would have liked to have seen 8 targets to Mike. I didn't think that was realistic, but I thought the player to step up would be Pat Freiermuth. And again, he did step up. He had a touchdown, I think like 60 yards. But I'm saying like target-wise, I thought he would be the go-to. But Pittsburgh stays. My tripod is so close to falling. Oh my God. Pittsburgh stays not utilizing Pat Freiermuth as much as we probably should be. Okay, all right, yeah, here's where a little bit of the complaining comes in. The first drive for Cleveland, Pittsburgh was so aggressive. TJ on the first play on our defense, the first play of the game for our defense, has like a 4-yard stop on the run coming off the opposite side that the running back was going to. Absolutely love to see that. Next play, we run just a total, I don't know if it was zone or if it was man because they didn't show many replays of the secondary side, so I was just watching the up front. But like if it was man, that was a cover 0. Like Pittsburgh just went at Jameis. And then we did it again, I think on third down, not necessarily to a cover 0 standpoint, but like instead of rushing 4, I think we rushed 5, or maybe it was a bluff, like a bluff to a spy. But nonetheless, we were making Jameis uncomfortable. And I think a quarterback like Jameis, who, you know, give him his credit. Yeah, he's kind of goofy and he hasn't been like a starter caliber quarterback for the entirety of his career. But one thing that he's really good at is when plays are extended, he can, you know, make the best out of those situations. We saw it on the touchdown to Jerry Jeudy, and a lot of the plays on like third and long or second and long, he's just really good once he gets out of the pocket and he can extend the play. He is really good with that. And so with Pittsburgh, this is what I didn't understand. I don't remember if I talked about this the last time they played the Browns. Something I didn't understand was like why we aren't blitzing that more, because then you're making him uncomfortable. And like if he gets out of the pocket, okay, whatever. At least you're making him still uncomfortable in that scenario, in that situation. Sorry. But when you're just rushing 4 all the time and you're like hoping that talent wins out in that situation, as opposed to like seeing, especially in this first drive, that the talent does win out occasionally, but if you're just running at the dude, like it's going to make him uncomfortable, he's going to make a mistake, or he's just going to take a sack. Why don't you do that more? And Pittsburgh went away from that. I think I only saw a little bit more aggressiveness in like the third quarter, and then, but like for the rest of the first quarter, Pittsburgh just completely went away from it and was just doing the kind of, like I was saying earlier, just the talent win out thing, which I understand you want to give your players a chance. And Pittsburgh does have a lot of talent and depth, especially in the front 7, but also you want to establish tempo early, and Pittsburgh did that at first, but then once Cleveland got the ball back, I don't remember if it was the second or the third drive in the first quarter where Cleveland was able to just kind of go down the field and score a touchdown. So, yeah, and I just remembered about something, but I can't talk about that until the end. Looking like a good defense, bad offense kind of game. I don't know. Mediocre by both points. We put up 27 points. We held them to 14. Like, just a fine game from both sides. I think that's a good way to gauge that. Okay, Fields red zone package. I think I wrote this down just because of the first time we were in the red zone in the first quarter, where we were just kind of sputtering. I think it did lead to a Najee touchdown, but still, like, we just don't look as organized or as threatening in the red zone compared to when we had Fields in. I've talked about it in multiple videos, just the stats of Russ's red zone efficiency versus Justin, so I'm not going to retouch on that again. But I would like to see more of that, unless Pittsburgh at this point, Pittsburgh is clearly planning for the postseason. So I think one win and Pittsburgh's probably a lock to make the playoffs. Doesn't matter if it's divisional or like division winning or just a wild card spot. Pittsburgh's going to make the playoffs. So maybe Pittsburgh is just not utilizing Justin Fields in the red zone right now because they want to save that for a possible Super Bowl run, which I completely understand and respect. But, you know, at the same time, if they're not planning any red zone Fields red zone packages, that we start now, please, because if you guys want to win a Super Bowl, I think those are going to be really, really helpful. Roughing the passer is so soft. Oh my God, I can't even be mad at the player. Like Jameis flopped. Even Bleacher Report sent out the notification. I was like, it was like wild Jameis flop or something. But like, dude, roughing the passer is so soft. I understand. Okay, listen. If it's like a bang play, but the quarterback gets hit in the head every single time, I understand it. That is going to be roughing the passer. I completely get it. When you're going low on a quarterback, even if it's like a bang play, I still give the refs the benefit of the doubt there. When it's like, I'm pretty sure the Alex Highsmith one, he hits him semi-wraps and then pulls his wrap off, and then Jameis just kind of like flops. Because, I mean, also there's probably momentum knocking him down. And you call it like, that's so fucking shit. I mean, the officiating in this game was actually pretty good for the most part. I think it's the first time I could say that all season. Like, there were that call, and I can't really think of another one off the top of my head that I was like, no. Like, that I disagreed with. But, so shout out to the refs for having one good game out of, 14, 15 so far. Good for you guys. So many go balls. Yeah, I still don't understand why. Like, I know it's Russell's kind of signature is the moon ball, but when it's like 3rd and 4 and you're just throwing up a moon ball, and everyone will love criticizing Justin Fields. Oh, why is Justin Fields throwing a moon ball on 3rd and 4 in a game situation? Well, clearly, that's not just a Justin Fields thing. That is just a play design thing. Again, I'd give it a little more understanding if he was throwing them up to George Pickens, but when you're throwing moon balls to Ben Skoranek and Scotty Miller, even though Scotty did have one late in the game that was pretty crucial for keeping the clock running and keeping Pittsburgh on the field, I just don't get that, maybe. So there was just a lot of go balls in the first quarter, and a lot of them too they're just like throwaways. I can think of 3, I think, off the top of my head right now. What else? Hopping into the second quarter, Pittsburgh. Oh yeah, for everyone that's like, Pittsburgh doesn't need another wide receiver, or people are like, the Arthur Smith system doesn't need 2 great wide receivers. That's why you need a wide receiver. It's not always getting a second wide receiver is not always because you want 2 stars. Yeah, you want 2 stars. That's awesome. Look at some of the best teams in the NFL, besides like the Chiefs, or the Bills somehow. Like, they don't need 2 wide receivers. I guess I should say, look at some of the best offenses in the NFL. They have 2 wide receivers that are like they could be considered ones. But when one of them possibly gets hurt, it's not always just like, we need 2 guys. It's also like, hey, what if, one of them isn't available for a week or a season, So this is why I was a little more on the side of, yes, Pittsburgh should be trading for a receiver. Also because I have my concerns with George Pickens' character that can lead to him not being on the field, whether it's by the league or the team decision. Now, Pittsburgh, obviously, today, this is why I said I don't think I'm going to be seeing a lot of red zone packages from like Fields, or we're going to be seeing 100% of what Pittsburgh's packages are for the rest of the season. That's because the same reason that George Pickens didn't play, which is Pittsburgh has Super Bowl aspirations, or at least a deep playoff run aspiration, and they rest him today because they don't want to. One tweak of a hamstring, it could be a 4-week injury, So, but Pittsburgh in the offseason has to prioritize getting a second wide receiver, whether it is in the draft, whether it is in free agency, with a like known commodity in free agency. I think there's only like 2 names in free agency, T. Higgins, and I can't remember the other person. But, if it's, I think because there's not too many names in free agency, I'd rather us draft someone in like the first, we might need another position in the first round I'll talk about later. But like the first or second round, because then they're cheap and they can be developed, and Pittsburgh has a clear knack for developing wide receivers. Interception. Oh, yeah, we got the interception from Keanu Benton. Awesome play. I'm not even going to put that on Jameis. That's just a great play made by Keanu Benton. I think 99% of the time that ball just kind of gets tipped or like not batted down, but like they try to intercept it, but they can't, But great play. And every time Pittsburgh has forces a turnover, I like to put a little arrow sign to see like, what did it lead to? Because for the last 5 years, it's been field goal or 3 and out. But this one led to a touchdown, which was awesome to see. That was the Van Jefferson touchdown, I believe, which was just a great play design. Absolutely loved that. Wait, was that the Jefferson touchdown? No, that was the Najee touchdown. Because it was 7-3 and then it was 7-10. Yeah, that was the Najee touchdown. We'll talk about the Van Jefferson touchdown in a little bit. But yeah, that was the Najee touchdown. So Pittsburgh was able to at least, capitalize on turnovers, which is something that I'm happy we're seeing Pittsburgh do, because this defense is giving me a little concerns if they're not able to force turnovers. And then the Warren quarter, this is when we started using Jaylen Warren a little bit more, which Najee looked, okay, I think it was the first run or the second run, Najee came out of the backfield and just looked explosive, man, for I don't think I've ever seen him pre-pause here, shoot the hole that hard before. I said pre-pause. I've never seen him just come out so fast. Pause again. But he was zooming, man, and it worked really great. And then after that, okay, this is something else. I think I wrote this in the third quarter slide. I did, yeah, but we'll talk about it now. Like the gaps that the O-line is creating in the run game, they're non-existent. And I'll give Cleveland's defense a lot of credit here too, because they're just a really, really good and stout front seven. When you run a 4-3 defense like they do, you're going to have nothing but big bodies in the box. And so they're going to be very run stout. But the offensive line and the tight ends included here should be able to create and open more gaps, but it was just bad like the entire time. I can think of two semi-ish explosive plays throughout the entire game. One was that Najee play, and the other one was the Jaylen Warren play. But the reason I started talking about this is because I said Jaylen Warren, and Jaylen Warren was running hard, man. It's really hard because Najee has those moments where he looks really, really good. But then, like, Jaylen comes in, and with Jaylen, it's like every time he looks really, really good, or he looks really, really explosive, I should say. With Najee, it's like, oh, one play a quarter, really, really explosive. But, like, Najee's been very consistent. So I'm very curious, like, how Pittsburgh should balance this, because I think the ceiling is higher with Jaylen, and I would argue the floor is safer with Jaylen too. But like with a dude like Najee who's so big, I mean, it's very similar, not as good obviously, but it's very similar to like Detroit, where you have a big body back in David Montgomery, and then you have a smaller, more agile, more, I don't want to say capable, but I think more agile is a good way to describe it, running back in Jahmyr Gibbs. That would be kind of like our Jaylen Warren. So their contracts are both up at the end of the season. I'm very curious what's going to happen if Pittsburgh is going to bring them both back, because they didn't pick up Najee's fifth-year option, so I'm very curious if I don't think they're just going to plan on Najee leaving, but I don't know. But I do want to get more Jaylen Warren work in here. I think, honestly, just like switching off plays or switching off drives would be great. Like first drive is Najee, second drive is, because then they're both fresh, and maybe limit. I mean, I can't even say limit Cordell Patterson, because he hasn't been horrible. He had the fumble today, but like he hasn't been bad enough where I'm like, get him off. It hasn't been like what I was saying the last couple weeks about Connor Hayward, where it's like a negative play every time he's in. So I just think prioritize Jaylen and Najee, and then maybe when they both need a rest, that's where you bring in Cordero. That's second quarter, third quarter. Talk about running gaps. Yeah, the fake read. I mean, it's not a fake read option because it's an RPO play. But it's like a triple option RPO, as in you can hand the ball off, you can option it for the quarterback, or you can throw the ball in, which, most RPOs that are run in the NFL, and I'd say like a lot in the collegiate system too, they're mainly a read of the running gaps and the running defense, and then to a throw. It's not usually using the quarterback's legs, which Pittsburgh utilized Russell's legs a lot today, which I really liked to see. And then the fact that, the entire defense sees, oh, Russ is going to keep it, and they all swamp down for him to just kind of sidearm it. It wasn't a sidearm, but you know what I mean? Sidearm it to Van Jefferson, who had an awesome touchdown. So shout out Van for completing the play, and also just like phenomenal play design. I think that's an Arthur Smith special right there. Fourth down stop. This is another one of the turnovers Pittsburgh forced that I wrote like the little arrow sign to. Got the touchdown. That was the Pat Freiermuth touchdown. I also said what a fucking play. Both the outcome, the design of it, and just how the players were able to have it go through. I think it was just one of the cleanest plays I've seen Pittsburgh's offense do in a long ass time. It just clearly looked like every single puzzle piece fell into the spot without like even needing help or adjustment. This is how we planned it. It's exactly how it worked. It's exactly how it should look, and it played perfectly. So I love to see that, because it's something we also haven't seen for most of the season, which means Pittsburgh's offense is getting more comfortable, which means they're getting a little more experimental, which means for a postseason or for the second half of the season, I guess last quarter of the season, there is definite room for changes and scheme modifications for this team, which I really like, as opposed to just expecting the same, like we kind of how we have for the last 4 or 5 years. Fourth quarter, Tomlin won once Tomlin won a challenge, I was like, Pittsburgh's going to win this game. There's no shot Pittsburgh loses a game that Mike Tomlin wins a challenge, and I think the world would explode, because Mike Tomlin never wins challenges. So if he wins a challenge, he wins the game. I think that's a pretty good rule to live by. If you see Mike Tomlin win a challenge, congratulations. Now, if he wins a challenge and loses one, then it offsets. So hopefully, if he wins a challenge, he's like, I'm not going to challenge for the rest of the game. But yeah, I saw that. Soft secondary, fourth quarter conservatism from our defense. I don't know how to feel about this, because the more I think about it, the more I kind of understand the thought process behind it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I've talked about it for like the last 3 or 4, maybe even 5 weeks. Shout out Jackson Smith and Jigba. Almost didn't play you in fantasy. Got me a TD. But what I'm talking about is throughout the entirety of the season, Pittsburgh's defense, especially the front seven doesn't have assignments. Their assignment is the quarterback. But the secondary has been playing, especially in the fourth quarter. We saw this especially last week and the week before against Cleveland and Cincinnati, where once the fourth quarter hits, last week we had a lead against Cincinnati, and they're just playing off by like 5 to 8 yards, which the reason I'm saying like I kind of understand the thought process here is you want them to, obviously you don't want them to complete the ball. But if they're going to complete it, you want them to complete it in the field of play without going out of bounds or to the boundary where they can possibly stop the clock. You want to keep them in the middle of the field or just, in play. That way the clock is running. Clock is your friend because the clock is your friend in the fourth quarter when you're up. But I think sometimes it's like, hey, when they're able to march down the entirety of the field in like 3 minutes and score a touchdown, maybe adjust halfway through, like, I don't know, throw some blitzes at them or disguise some coverages. Or another thing we didn't utilize this game that we utilized last game I talked about, which I really liked, was moving TJ around. TJ, for the most part, besides like that one play, was pretty much non-factor. Can't wait for all the Browns fans. Look at this game comparison, TJ Watt to Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett had a sack. TJ didn't have a sack. Yeah, Myles Garrett had a sack on a play that Russell wanted to get sacked on because then it would run the clock. Cool. Nice job. Myles Garrett, I like you as a person, but I'm sure you're a great guy. But you're talking a lot of shit last time. You did jacker shit from this game too. Again, this is all fun and games, but you didn't do anything in this game after talking all that talk. Now, I'm not saying TJ did either, but I'm just saying it was pretty quiet until the last drive where Russell basically let you sack him. So Cleveland Browns fans are going to be like, look at this game comparison. This is why Myles is better. Calm the fuck down. Calm the fuck down, you box score watchers. But yeah, TJ has been kind of a non-factor. And you know what? This is where I've been defending Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I still will kind of a little bit because no one's throwing at him. But I do need Minkah to do something. Just something besides tackle. I need something, a strip fumble, an interception, a pass deflection. Like, no one's throwing at him, so he can't do that. But I just need something because I just need something from you, man. You've been great, but if I'm not calling your name, that's a good thing. But I just need something. Oh yeah, and then I wrote, "Hey Art," and then like massive letters. Stop the outside tosses. They don't work. They've worked twice all season. You know what works really great that I actually do like? Inside tosses. Legitimately never thought that would ever work for a play call where they toss it to the running back who runs it into an inside gap. Like, that's great. Those have been working, at least for like at a minimum of 2 or 3 yards. Every time we run a toss play besides twice this season, it is like a loss or not even a gain. Stop it. It's not – you think you're going to big brain it because you got one touchdown off of it? Pull it out. Pause. Stop. Get it out of the playbook. So that's all 4 quarters right there. I already talked about no George Pickens for the most part. So nothing else really there. What did I say? Defensive adjustments. I talked about it, how Pittsburgh didn't really move TJ. I didn't really talk about it. I just started talking about Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. Pittsburgh did not really move TJ around on the line of scrimmage, which I'm like, why not? Alex Highsmith was back, though. You could definitely tell in the past. And the first half run defense, you could definitely tell he was back. Second half, Cleveland was able to run the ball a little more efficiently and effectively. It felt like, at least. I don't have the stats up in front of me. But yeah, they're not moving TJ. And this isn't even just TJ. This is also Highsmith, Herbig, like anybody. They're not really moving them around. But also one thing I'm noticing is TJ is not even playing that many snaps right now because I think Pittsburgh has such comfort at the depth they have at edge rusher. Now that Alex is healthy, we have Herbig, who's had a really great season, and Preston Smith has shown that he was worth trading for. Pittsburgh, like, there were multiple times I was like, TJ's not on the field. Is he hurt? No, he was just getting his wind back, try not to get too fatigued. But I would like to see us utilizing more blitzes. I'd like to see us moving TJ around the line of scrimmage because it did work. Like, I understand that TJ, he's come out and said before, I've talked about this as well, that if he rushes from the opposite side, which if you're facing the quarterback from the defense's point of view, he likes coming off of the left side. So he's always said that if he comes off the right side, it's like riding with your other hand. Like, it's something that he's just not used to. But last week when they were moving him to the other side, or when they were bluffing his outside rush and then swimming him inside and then having the tackle, usually Larry Ogunjobi or Keanu Benton, then take his gap, it was successful. And not necessarily that he was getting a sack every single play, but that it was confusing the offensive line. Things were out of sync, and then the play kind of broke down from there. So I'd like to see Pittsburgh using that more. I'd like to see a little bit of blitzing more. And that brings me in. Joey Porter. This sucks to say. I don't want to say this. Joey Porter's not a cornerback one. Earlier I said, first round, maybe we draft a wide receiver. Maybe we draft a corner. I mean, we have depth at the position with, Dante being our 1, Joey being our 2, and then, you've got Beanie Bishop / Corey Trice / Cam Sutton / James Pierre, who when James Pierre has to come in for a couple plays, he's okay. He's fine. He's comfortable. But we do not have a dog. Sorry, I said that very whitely. We don't have a dog. Dante Jackson has, I think, 6 interceptions or 5 interceptions on the season. That's great. And he's been locked down, but he also hasn't I feel like he can't play an entirety of a game without missing a couple snaps because of injury or just tweaking something. So we need someone that can be that. And I thought Joey would take this step because Joey's rookie season was freaking great. Last 4 or 5 weeks, I would argue even most of this season, he has been exposed. And he spends more time crying to the refs than just adjusting. Hey, yeah, they pushed off, Joey. Get to the fucking next play. If they didn't throw the flag, cool. There's nothing you can do about it. I know you might be trying to just make the refs aware of it. Maybe do that in between drives. Hey, he's been pushing off. Please keep your eye on it. Because then you're just psyching yourself out. Joey is not a 1 right now. I'd like him to go back to it, but I don't know where this second year regression has come from. But I would not be mad if Pittsburgh drafts, because we shouldn't be drafting offensive line. We should not be drafting defensive line. We should not be drafting quarterback. We should not be drafting running back. We should be drafting second. We should not be drafting linebacker. Literally, the only places I can think Pittsburgh drafts right now in the first round are wide receiver or secondary. And I don't think Pittsburgh's going to draft a safety because Deshaun Elliott has been a star for us since we signed him in free agency. Minka's going to be there. So it's literally going to be a cornerback or wide receiver if I had to guess in the first round. And if it's a corner, I'm fine with that. If Pittsburgh gets... They're not going to get T. Higgins. I really don't think so because he's going to want so much money. But if they get someone like a B-tier wide receiver and they draft one of the best corners in this draft class, I'm fine with that. Totally fine with that. Because I don't think, off the top of my head right now, there might be, I just can't think of any right now, I don't think there's any good cornerbacks that are free agents in this upcoming free agency. So now, if we do get that and Joey does kind of fix his mechanics, get everything fixed up, then cool. You got 3 guys that can be on the field at the same time, and I'm not worried at all with Dante, Joey, and whoever that third person is. But, Joey has been a liability lately, and it sucks to say that. Mike Williams, I already talked about him. So, Pittsburgh has to go to Philly. Kenny Pickett revenge game if Jalen Hurts gets hurt. What a weird phrase. Jalen Hurts gets hurt. I don't know if Pittsburgh can stop them. I know that the Panthers almost did. But like I said, I think it's just one of those situations where the Eagles were game planning for the Steelers game and kind of looking past, hoping that talent wins out against Carolina. And I think that was majority of the case here. But next week, we were talking about teams that have great offensive systems with 2 wide receivers. You've got Devonta Smith and you've got A.J. Brown now. And I have not seen Joey matched up against the wide receiver 1s for teams almost all season. So now he's going to get a 1, whether it's Devonta Smith. Most likely they're probably going to match him up on A.J. Brown just because of size. Because, I don't think why would you put a 6'2", 85-inch wingspan corner on Devonta Smith, who's tiny. I think that makes way more sense to put. And also, Devonta Smith is a speed demon. Not that A.J. Brown isn't, but I think that makes more sense to match up Dante Jackson there. So, hey, Joey, make me eat my words. Make me have some alphabet soup, and I will make the word words and eat it. My words and eat it. Shut up. All right. It's been a long week. So, yeah. I'm not going to speculate about anything. I know I didn't talk about Russ. There wasn't really much to talk about. It's kind of hard to gauge Russ's performance without George. I guess you could say he didn't really necessarily elevate the other wide receivers, but also the other wide receivers we have on this team are not, besides maybe Calvin Austin, and like Pat Fryermuth. Everyone else is kind of veteran-ish, where it's kind of hard to elevate that to a point where it's like things that they don't already know. Scotty Miller had a great catch on the sideline, but it's hard to evaluate. I mean, Russ had how many yards? Russ had 158 yards, and 6 carries. But I think this is kind of funny too, because it's a situation where if Justin finished with 158 yards, people would be like, you got to make that quarterback change. You don't have to make a quarterback change right now with Russell. Whether it was Russell, whether it was Justin, you don't have George Pickens, who is your wide receiver 1 and is a wide receiver 1 in this league. You didn't have him. You were able to win the game by 2 scores. That's fine. That's enough for me. Pittsburgh 7-3. I don't even know what I'm going to title this video. Probably George Pickens related. He's an easy, recognizable name that you can pull up. So I'm going to edit this, watch the post-game press conferences, film a skit, live my life. You guys know how I mean these.